Hello everyone, what is up? It is me, LBMTG. For today's video, what we're going to be doing is taking a look at 5 Ravnica Allegiance cards that are showing up in some modern decks. Of course, we knew Ravnica Allegiance was going to impact Standard, but there are some cards that are showing up in a couple of modern decks that I just wanted to kind of point out, maybe get you guys excited to maybe try out one of these modern decks, or just kind of see some new innovations and upgrades that some people are running. And yeah, it should be a pretty fun video. So we're going to start off here with Burn, which is actually, as you guys can see, sometimes people like to look up here at the tabs that I've opened. This is a 5-card video, but we only have 4 tabs up here open. That's because Burn got 2 pretty interesting little additions here. So it got Light Up the Stage, 3 mana for a sorcery, or it has Spectacle for 1 red mana, and then exile the top 2 cards of your library until the end of your next turn. You may play those cards. So kind of like a 1 mana draw 2 is what you're really hoping that this is for your Burn deck. You're playing a lot of low cost aggressive things, easy to turn on Spectacle, and then easy to cast off of the Light Up the Stage. So could be a little bit of a card draw spell in red, which is something we don't see, too often. We've seen some cards in the past like Browbeat, Risk Factor, those kind of cards that have they've tried them in Burn, but they haven't really done too much. So now people are trying out Light Up the Stage, and I personally haven't tried it out yet. I'm actually going to be trying it out on Monday when I go to Modern Monday at my local game store. I'm going to be trying both of these new cards. So we have Light Up the Stage, and then the other card here is Skewer the Critics. 3 mana sorcery or Spectacle for 1 red mana. Skewer the Critics deals 3 damage to any target. Skewer the Critics is also showing up in a few other decks, things like the Is It Phoenix decks, mono red Phoenix decks, basically just anything that's trying to be super aggressive. Having the ability to just play 8 lightning bolts in something like the Phoenix decks where you're just trying to cast 3 spells in a turn to return your Phoenixes, really, really good. Also pumps up things like Monastery Swift Spear as well, which sometimes the Phoenix decks will run as well. So it's a pretty solid little card here in Skewer the Critics. So Burn's really trying this one out. I think Skewer the Critics is going to be fine. I think 4 might be a little too many. It could be kind of interesting to see how the deck building decisions change. Like, for example, the list we're looking at here is just a mono red list, so they took the option to put in Light Up the Stage and to put in Skewer the Critics, and their drawback was that they had to lose cards like Boros Charm and Lightning Helix by removing white from their deck, and they also lost out on some of the good white sideboard cards that Burn sometimes has access to, Deflecting Palm, Path to Exile, cards of that nature, Rest in Peace, and other Graveyard Hate, Stony Silence. Those sort of good white sideboard cards you're also losing out on. But instead, you're making the deck a little bit more consistent. You don't have to worry about cards like Field of Ruin or Ghost Quarter ruining your potential splash color for Burn. You should always be able to cast your spells. So it is a pretty interesting decision to run the Light Up the Stage and the Skewer the Critics. I'm really interested to try it out. Like I said, I haven't quite gotten the chance to try it out yet in Modern, so my opinion on it right now is that it's going to be pretty solid, but I won't know for sure until I try it on Monday. Next list we're going to take a look at here, this is going to be your Prime Speaker Vannevar combo list. This is quite the complicated deck. If you guys aren't familiar with the way that these sort of pod decks is what they're called, named after Birthing Pod, which is a card currently banned in Modern. The Prime Speaker Vannifar here from Ravnica Allegiance has the same effect as that Birthing Pod did, but this time on a creature instead of on an artifact, and with no Phyrexian mana involved, which of course we all know Phyrexian mana is a very, very powerful mechanic for Magic the Gathering. So basically what you're trying to do with Prime Speaker Vannifar is you're going to work up the creature chain to eventually end up winning the game with Kiki Jiki Mirror Breaker. Kiki Jiki, 5 mana 2/2 with haste. Tap, create a token that's a copy of target non-legendary creature you control. That token has haste. Sacrifice it at the beginning of the next end step. So what you're going to do is you're going to work your way up the chain, whether it's a Birds of Paradise Noble Hierarch, you're going to start here. Then you're going to go ahead and get your... So this is assuming that you have one other creature out and a Prime Speaker Vannifar. You have the Prime Speaker Vannifar, you're going to tap to sacrifice your 1-drop Birds of Paradise or Noble Hierarch. You're going to then find your Scrib Ranger. You're going to use the Return a Forest you control to its owner's hand ability to untap target creature. You're going to go ahead and untap your Prime Speaker Vannifar. You're going to go ahead and sacrifice your Scrib Ranger to your Prime Speaker Vannifar, which is going to find a Bounding Krasis. You're going to use your Bounding Krasis to untap your Prime Speaker Vannifar, and then you're going to use that Prime Speaker Vannifar to sacrifice your Bounding Krasis to then find a Breaching Hippocamp, which is a card that I never in a million years would have thought would have been seeing play in any Modern deck whatsoever. This is this is one of the cards that I cut from my Pauper cube. It just wasn't even powerful enough in Pauper, it's it's here in Modern now. So 2 copies of Breaching Hippocamp, the classic Horsefish. So again, you're gonna go ahead and have the Horsefish enter the battlefield, untap another target creature. You're gonna go ahead and untap your Kiki-Jiki Mirror Breaker, Kiki-Jiki, or to untap your Prime Speaker Vannifar. My apologies. Prime Speaker Vannifar then sacrifices Breaching Hippocamp, which then finds you Kiki-Jiki. And then what you're going to do is have the Kiki-Jiki copy anything that, any other sort of creature that could potentially combo off with Kiki-Jiki. You have pretty much all the combos here. So something like a Bounding Krasis, you have it enter the battlefield, you tap your Kiki-Jiki to create a copy of Bounding Krasis. The Bounding Krasis token enters the battlefield. It has the same enters the battlefield ability, so then you untap target creature, you untap your Kiki-Jiki, you then choose to again continue to target your Bounding Krasis. You make infinite Bounding Krasis with your Kiki-Jiki, and then because of Kiki-Jiki saying that the token has haste, you then have an infinite number of hasty creatures to just attack your opponent and win on the spot. And of course, it doesn't have to be the Bounding Krasis. It can be, again, Breaching Hippocamp if you wanted to. If you manage to beat down your opponent with an army of Horsefish, that would be pretty sweet. Also, a little bit of additional tech in here. We've got the Woodland Bellower, which I talked about here on the channel previously, saying that I'd like to see it show up in some Modern deck, but I didn't know which one. Here, it finds a bunch of your combo pieces. Can find you a Mana Dork if you need it. Most of the time you won't need it. Find you the Scavenging Ooze if you need the Graveyard Hate. Find you the Scrib Ranger or the Bounding Krasis if you're looking for a combo piece, or find you an Eternal Witness to get back a combo piece, since you are only running, say, for example, 4 Prime Speaker Vannifar. You don't, get the opportunity to draw them every game potentially. Maybe one hits the graveyard, and then you can go ahead and use your Eternal Witness to bring it back, after they take care of it with maybe something like, 2 Lightning Bolts, or they Thoughtseize it out of your hand, something along those lines. The deck is also running Postmortem Lunge, which I think is a fantastic choice as well. Very, very spicy. X in a Phyrexian mana. Return target creature card with converted mana cost X from your graveyard to the battlefield. It gains haste. Exile it at the beginning of the next end step. So again, you're going to go ahead and use this ability to pay 4 plus 2 life to bring back your Prime Speaker Vannifar. Has haste already because of the Postmortem Lunge, so you can go ahead and activate the ability on the turn when it comes out, and then you can, again, go up the chain that I told you about and then combo off with Prime Speaker Vannifar, and then eventually finding Kiki-Jiki plus some number of untappy creatures. So this list, again, pretty sweet. The Temur, I think it's all Temur. Yeah, it's pretty much Temur. This one, you're not really ever going to cast this for the black mana. In fact, I don't even think there is the ability to cast it for black mana from this mana base. Zero ways to do that. Maybe if your opponent has an Urborg in play, then you can go ahead and not pay the 2 Phyrexian mana. But pretty sweet list here with the Prime Speaker Vannifar combo list. On to card number 4 now. This is a white-blue mid-range deck that showed up towards the beginning of January, had, 2 pretty solid finishes in leagues, and then didn't really do anything for the following 2 weeks, and then had a pretty good performance. I think it was 6-2. Yeah, 6-2 here in the Modern Premier, and then showed up again here with the competitive Modern League 5-0 here with this list. So I don't honestly like this list too much. I think white-blue control is a little bit better. It does fit my playstyle a little bit more because it's nice and grindy, but I think it's just worse than regular blue-white control is in Modern. That deck is just quite strong. But the new card that it's running is Absorb. Absorb was originally printed in Invasion, but Invasion was before Modern, so it was not actually legal in Modern until its reprinting here in Ravnica Allegiance. And so now you're seeing it show up here in some of these blue-white decks. So you're seeing the white-blue mid-range here, which again, I said is a pretty grindy deck. You're playing things like Restoration Angel to blink your Wall of Omens to get additional value off of your Wall of Omens, blink Kitchen Finks to get additional value off of your Kitchen Finks, some extra life in there. Maybe, some hand attack by blinking a Vendilion Click, or, getting additional value by blinking a Snapcaster Mage, those sort of things. And then you get like these great hate cards like Settle the Wreckage and Detention Sphere, these exile effects, which are pretty solid against the Phoenix decks and the Dredge decks that are pretty potent right now in the format. And then also just having incidental life gain in the form of Absorb, in the form of Kitchen Finks, and then blockers in the form of Wall of Omen. So a pretty reasonable choice, but again, I think I just like blue-white control better. But this is a deck that's taking advantage of Absorb. Curryvore here is the person who played the deck. He had 2 Absorb in the main as well as 2 in the sideboard, so they really liked adding Absorb to this list, and it seems like it did pretty well for him since they ended up going 5-0 in the league using Absorb. So pretty sweet inclusion there. Nice to see that this card that got reprinted and is now Modern legal is showing up at least a little bit now in Modern. Then the final card we're going to take a look at today is Electro Dominance. This is going to be a very sweet list that we're going to take a look at here. The deck name is Living Dominance, and it's because you're using Electro Dominance and As Fortold to win the game via Living End. So the way that this works is Electro Dominance says for X and then 2 red, Electro Dominance deals X damage to any target. You may cast a card with converted mana cost X or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. So the way that this ends up working is when you're able to pay things without paying their mana cost, when you're able to cast these cards without paying their mana cost, you're able to do some pretty busted things with cards like Ancestral Visions and Living End, which have converted mana cost of 0. So by casting an Electro Dominance, X equals 0, so you're casting it for 2 red, you're also able to then play a Living End or an Ancestral Visions from your hand. Same thing goes with As Foretold as well. Once each turn, you may pay 0 rather than pay the mana cost for a spell you cast with converted mana cost X or less, where X is the number of time counters on As Foretold. So even if the number is 0 on the As Foretold, you can still play a free Ancestral Visions or a Living End without needing to cast it the way it was intended to be cast by the suspend mechanic. So pretty sweet little list here. And then with Living End, this is the main way that the deck is going to win. Living End says each player removes all creature cards in his or her graveyard from the game, then sacrifices all creatures he or she controls, then puts into play all cards he or she removed this way. So the simple way to put it, all creatures on the battlefield get switched with all creatures in the graveyard. That's just the easiest way to go about saying that. So what you do in this deck is you run a bunch of cards with cycling. So Striped Riverwinder has cycling. Discard this card, draw a card. So you're going to be cycling through your deck, you're going to be drawing these cards. Meanwhile, you're incidentally putting these creature cards in the graveyard by discarding them. And they're all pretty big creatures too. You got a 5/5 hexproof here with the Striped Riverwinder. You've got a 6/4 here with the Desert Ceradon. 3/4 here that when it comes into play deals 3 damage to a creature with flying in the Deadshot Minotaur. Curator of Mysteries, again a solid little one that even if you have to hard cast it, you don't feel too bad because it's got some pretty relevant text on there. And then the Architects of Will as the final cycler in the deck. You also have Jace Vryn's Prodigy, which is a way for you to again draw through your deck, try to find the Living Ends, try to find the Electro Dominance or the As Foretold, whatever you need to combo off. I also find it pretty interesting that they were running a one of Tormod's Crypt in the main. I think this is just kind of a hedge against Dredge, again being so powerful right now in Modern. If you end up putting your entire opponent's Dredge graveyard onto the battlefield, even if you have all these bigger creatures up here that we talked about before, the chances are that the Dredge player is still going to end up winning that one because they'll have so many creatures in the graveyard. So I can totally understand the Tormod's Crypt here in the main. I find it pretty interesting that there was none added to the sideboard, but there was one in the main. You had some Surgicals, I guess, for graveyard hate too, and Angers are pretty good against Dredge as well. So yeah, that was Electro Dominance Living End here, featuring Electro Dominance again from Guilds of Ravnica. This interaction, you're not really hoping to maybe, cast Electro Dominance where you're tapping 9 mana, X is 7, you're going to deal 7 to your opponent and then put a Striped Riverwinder into play. That's not really what this deck is trying to do. It's trying to get you to pay 2 red mana so that you can get a Living End or an Ancestral Visions off and either draw 3 cards or put all of these dumb creatures back onto the board. So very, very sweet deck there with Electro Dominance Living End. Again, we'll talk about the 5 cards one more time, do a quick little review. So Light Up the Stage and Skewer the Critics. There we go, Light Up the Stage and Skewer the Critics here. Some red cards going in Burn from Guilds of Ravnica. The deck that formed an entire new, or the card that formed an entire new deck around it, I should say. Prime Speaker Vannifar here with this pod deck. Then you're going to take a look at the white-blue mid-range here, where Absorb is showing up as a counterspell for these white-blue decks to do pretty well as a 3-drop counterspell. And then finally, Electro Dominance to cheat in your cards like Living End and Ancestral Visions. So thank you guys so much for watching this video. Let me know what other Ravnica Allegiance cards you think are going to be showing up in Modern decks soon, or that maybe you're testing out in Modern yourself. I think it'd be pretty interesting to hear what you guys have planned for some Ravnica Allegiance cards in the Modern format. And with that being said, thank you all so much for watching today's video. Leave a like if you guys did enjoy it. Be sure to subscribe if you want more videos like this in the near future, and I'll see you guys here next time. Thank you all so much for watching today's video where we talked about 5 Ravnica Allegiance cards that are showing up in the Modern format. At the end of all of my videos, I'd love to do a huge shout out and thank you to my patrons for the month. So huge shout out and thank you to Jeremy, Rodrigo, Jason, Daniel, Battlewolf MTG, Down Under MTG, and Jyathy Swarn for supporting me over on the Patreon page this month. Definitely means a lot, and I really appreciate you guys making it all the way to the end of the video. That also means a lot to me, so thank you guys so much.